I'm Matthew Kurbis, the subscription attorney, and this is Law Subscribed, your dedicated source for all things subscriptions and the law. Thank you to my sponsors. See links to them in the show notes. Everything discussed is only for educational and entertainment purposes. Enjoy the show. Okay. All right. We're live. So my standard LinkedIn Live reminder that if you're watching this now or listening to this now, and it's not at the actual moment that we've gone live, you could see what it looks like for me and Connor to sit there awkwardly silent as we wait for LinkedIn to catch up and we make sure everything on the ones and twos are working in the background by actually following me on LinkedIn, follow Connor, click the bell, and set it to all notifications so that you're notified when we go live. Because what's great about these live recordings, because at the end of the day, it is a recording. You may be watching the recording. You may be listening to the podcast if it's come through Law Subscribe's podcast feed. But when you're live with us, you get to ask questions, and we actually get to answer them live. And that will influence the direction of the conversation that Connor and I have today, which is a really interesting one that I'm looking forward to having. But before we even get to that, just a couple more housekeeping things is that we will follow up. So if you're watching this and you're on LinkedIn and you want to participate in the conversation, you want Connor and I to answer any questions that you have, even if you're watching this later on, comment on the events page in LinkedIn. We'll get notified and we'll follow up. What's great about doing these LinkedIn Lives is we can have an ongoing conversation, and it's not just this one-way communication like a typical podcast. So, Connor, thank you for being brave and coming on a live interview for Law Subscribed. Tell us about yourself and about your company.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me, Matthew. Really excited to be doing this. So yeah, my name is Connor. I am a former corporate ECVC and M&A lawyer working out in San Francisco for several years. While there, I was really spending a lot of time with the firm on internal initiatives, as well as working with external parties like Carta for product development. So really had the legal tech bug for a lot of my career. Ended up leaving to go to business school out at Harvard, which is when I met some cool people in the MIT PhD program who were working on some awesome AI things. Fast forward a couple years later, and we are now a full running company with venture-backed financing from some awesome investors and institutional funds, angel investors as well, working on legal AI that helps companies and law firms review and synthesize company documents. So I'll pause there, but happy to go into that more.
Yeah. Well, I actually tomorrow. So again, if you're listening to this live, you actually go see like what date it was. If you're watching this later, tomorrow I'm going to speak to the high school I went to, because I happen to live a few towns over now, and I'm talking to their entrepreneurship class, and I get to sort of let them know about what it's like to be an entrepreneur, both from my own personal perspective, but also I help a lot of entrepreneurs. But I'm in like the small business, like the SMB space. Right. But so a question I get all the time when I talk to wannabe entrepreneurs, and let's just call them what they are. They're entrepreneurs. They just haven't started their first company yet. They think, oh, maybe I want to go to law school so I can learn about legal stuff so that I could do my own legal work. And I was like, no. That is not a good idea. But Connor, that's kind of what you did. And in your practice, you did the stuff. You did the legal work, in venture capital space for tech startups. And now you're the founder of a tech startup that's, venture backed. So, was that actually helpful? And if you could go back and change anything, would you have skipped law school and just gone right into entrepreneurship?
That's a great question. Yeah, I don't think law school is necessarily the straightest path to entrepreneurship. Nevertheless, though, I think it's a really amazing framework for thinking critically and analytically about not just legal questions, but about most questions that you encounter. So in that sense, I think it really is a great foundation for entrepreneurial work in general. While in law school, I spent a lot of time working in clinics with, real world people. And I think that that's definitely advice I would have for people if they are in that route. Sometimes law school can be so theoretical that as much of that kind of practical experience that you can get is a great way to be able to apply, those legal skills to a variety of different fields, even if it's not just strictly practicing law.
Yeah. And now, did you always know that this was going to be a path for you, or did billing hours at a large firm was something that made you say, I got to get out of this. I have to go do something else?
Yeah, I always had the entrepreneurial bug in me. My dad started a very small jewelry store that's still running to this day in Maryland. So I really got to see his entrepreneurial journey of, sacrificing a lot of time, effort, to be able to build, his shop over time. But nevertheless, I didn't really know what that would look like for myself and for my own journey. Definitely, discovered it along the way. And then it really wasn't until, I think as a lot of people would say, that ChatGPT moment where I saw kind of that real shift where, we have this new kind of foundational technology that enables the legal practice to not just make a marginal improvement here or there, but to really change the way law is delivered. And that's what made me really excited about knowing that this was the right time to make the jump to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, yeah. Now, don't get me wrong, though. I'm sure you're happy to not be billing hours anymore.
Yeah, no, definitely happy in that respect.
Well, I'm curious, though, how that plays a role in you starting Marveri, because if you think about it, like the things that you were doing probably manually can now be automated. And so, like, did you even see a little bit of writing on the wall for, hey, this business model, like this is not going to make any sense soon. I better go out and build a tool that helps it make sense, for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I think the legal industry is, again, kind of precedent based in a lot of ways
Yeah.
where it will continue to do things that it knows works. And, I saw in my own practice that there are even, some tools out there that were kind of obviously helpful and that would improve the way that we would, deliver legal services. Nevertheless, I think because it was kind of incremental changes that it wasn't in some sense worth it for the firm to spend the time to evaluate, to adopt, to train on those kind of marginal functionalities. So, I saw a lot of instances of kind of a low-hanging fruit, but it became very clear to me that low-hanging fruit companies are not really going to, be enough to break into this kind of precedent-based industry. So yeah, it really was until I saw this kind of 10x or 100x level opportunity of AI to change the way that legal work gets done, where I thought, hey, now this seems like the opportunity where, you really can make a difference with the business model.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say, like, politics aside, I know that the VC space, in light of the new administration, is very excited for all the potential M&A work and transactions that are going to be happening. So did you have a crystal ball, Connor? Like, because like this is not the only AI-based, efficiency tool for transactional and M&A lawyers that is starting to come out in the market. But you've been developing this for a long time, I understand. And so, like, you've been kind of preparing for this moment, like this fever pitch, this volcano has like been building up pressure and it's about to erupt in a lot of M&A deals. At least I hope so too, since I do a lot of even the smaller M&A deals. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have been developing the product for a long time. As mentioned, we have some awesome researchers and engineers from MIT, Microsoft, Google, and really spent a lot of time focusing on making sure that we can deliver a product that actually solves, real lawyers' problems in, in a real life environment, right? So not just in a theoretical demo, but really as it applied to kind of the messiness that lawyers encounter on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, M&A markets kind of go up and down all the time, or, people get busy or less busy with the markets as well. One of the ways that I think that's interesting about AI, though, is enable us to, be able to kind of flatten out some of that huge variability so that, there's not instances where, associates are given, 10 deals at once that they have to manage and none of the tools to be able to manage them. So really kind of preparing for those instances where, people are kind of more busy than they can handle. And because of that, clients aren't getting the best work product that they probably deserve.
Right, right. And so before we get into the tool and tools of what your AI product and software does for lawyers, for law firms, for these transactions, let's get a little bit about the history of the company, right? Like, what was the ultimate inspiration for its founding, and how'd you come up with the name? Because it certainly is not like a name that I've seen anywhere else before.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we really spent a lot of time thinking about the way in which AI and the law kind of can overlap, looking at what are some of the major pain points that lawyers have on a regular basis, and then saying, where is AI both good now, but then also where will it be good in the future, right? Where can we keep seeing these main improvements? And I think a lot of people, when they saw the initial, AI models come out, ChatGPT, right? They kind of immediately thought, chatbots or generative AI, where it makes sense because that's kind of how, the tool is given to consumers through ChatGPT or things like that. But we really took a much different approach of thinking about leveraging these AI models to really understand and synthesize data rather than just generate more data. So that's in some parts, where we got our name. Marveri is a combination of Marbury, as in Marbury versus Madison, the seminal Supreme Court case that really revolutionized the way that law is adjudicated in the United States. And we thought similarly, AI is going to revolutionize the way that law is practiced. Nevertheless, though, we then thought, okay, how can the way in which law is practiced really be beneficial for lawyers and clients? And we came down to the conclusion that really truth is at the heart of it, which is where we get the last part of our name, veri, which is Latin for truth. So, the approach that we've taken from the very beginning, what's embedded in our name, is being able to use AI to really change the way that the law is practiced, but using it to synthesize and uncover the truth or the reality of, company documentation, legal documentation, rather than just create more and more text.
Yeah, and look, any fan of the V for Vendetta movie already knew that veri was Latin for truth, and the fact that the whole hallucination problem with AI, which I actually don't think is a problem. I think it's just a misunderstanding of how AI works, that it's a statistical model, but that's a whole other thing. So there's this focus on truth in AI and factual accuracy in AI. And also kind of, if my semi-dyslexic brain kicks in, I might look at it and I might think Maverick at first. So I'm like, ooh, they're doing something different. So, there's a lot of elements at play there. So I like that a lot. Something you mentioned that I want to pull on, a thread that something you started to talk about, was how you're doing things differently than just your standard, how people have been interacting and interfacing with these AI chatbots and AI tools. And so I see on your website here, marveri.com, you got the domain. That's what's nice about making up a new word. You got the domain. And obviously link in the show notes and all that stuff. On that webpage, it says just upload documents and Marveri does the rest. So obviously that's copy, that's the marketing copy on your website, but tell me what's going on behind, without giving away the secret sauce. Not that you could, that's what you have engineers for, but what's going on behind the scenes and what does that actually mean? What can lawyers expect if they use the platform?
Yeah, definitely. So, maybe it might be helpful to walk through a couple concrete examples.
Sure.
So, let's say that you're an ECVC lawyer and you're representing a new client and you get all their documents, in the door. What will often happen is those documents are a bit of a mess. They're all over the place. It takes a while just to kind of figure out what's there and what's not. So the way our system works is you kind of just throw all of those documents into our platform, you click start. And we use a variety of different AI models that first can do just the low-hanging fruit, but can do it really well, of just organizing, renaming all of those files. So you get kind of a completely messy document set that's maybe from Box or Dropbox, Google Drive, or an email zip, and you have a really nice consolidated document set that's super easy to understand. And then we do some more advanced AI tooling of being able to really understand all of those documents and how they fit together. So we can analyze that whole document set together and figure out, does this client have some other outstanding document that it looks like isn't in this data set? For example, is there an option, a grant that doesn't have a board approval, or vice versa? Is there a master service agreement without, some of the underlying documents that might accompany it? Or is there an amendment to a document that isn't that, and we don't have the actual underlying agreement in the first place? So we're able to kind of generate that list of missing documents, of documents that you need to follow up on, as well as identify, key provisions about, rights that particular investors might have, or really important contractual terms from the underlying documents. And obviously this functionality works really well with due diligence in transactions, both small scale, bigger scale, venture financings to M&A, where you might be preparing companies for due diligence. So you need to consolidate and organize all those company documents in terms of a diligence request list. And our system is able to do that. Or you might be conducting due diligence yourself and needing to review hundreds of commercial agreements for very particular provisions that you need to analyze. So, our system is able to, again, just do all of that without you needing to be a prompt engineering expert or to kind of do the manual work of going through and asking it to do all those things. Nevertheless, though, our system is always fully explainable and traceable. So we give you always one click away the underlying document for the analysis in which it's based on. So it's really easy to verify and confirm that results are what you would expect.
Yeah, I mean, like this is amazing, right? Like if somebody's if you're the only downside about joining us live is you can't like rewind by 30 seconds or a couple minutes and like listen to that explanation again, because every single lawyer's eyes should have lit up when you said basically that you take AI and you organize the files. like that is the solution every single lawyer has been looking for their own files, let alone for their clients' files, right? Like leveraging AI to just do the thing is how we've used software up until AI, right? Like it's like, okay, this software, this is what the solution is that it promises. It promises to do X, Y, and or Z, right? Or just X. And what Marveri is coming in and saying that you're doing, at least at a minimum, is like you get a new client and they have a bunch of messy files and we will use AI. And all the prompting's happening in the background. You don't even need a prompt. We will just organize all the files for you. And because we've prompted all the stuff in the background or coded it or whatever, it will find the omissions, will find the everything else. And that's as simple as like an upload and like click start. Like, is that as simple as it is?
Yeah, it's really that simple. And that's really been kind of the baseline of how we thought about our product. Again, as mentioned, like just the cost of getting lawyers to have one more tool that they need to train on and, spend a lot of time integrating to their workflow just doesn't seem like something that's attractive for a lot of customers. So we want to make it as simple as possible for you to be able to get the results that you want while we do kind of all the messy work on the back end.
Yeah. And I will still say that I think there's a place for both AI assistant, like prompting, talking to, tools, and exactly what you're doing. Like, I don't necessarily see you competing with those software solutions at all. I see you like each, you are doing such specific thing just with that type of thing that I mean, like, I pride myself on like having a spreadsheet of like over 100 AI solutions, right? And I've yet to come across a software solution that's AI powered that does exactly what you just talked about, is like the core product of Marveri, right? Like you could certainly sell that directly into companies to organize their files, directly into law firms to organize all their files and their clients' files and everything, right? Like that on its own is a product. Yet you have the background of legal and of transactional work and M&A work. And so in the VC space, so like you are taking that and you are first applying it in that niche, which is a great lesson for any entrepreneur. Just because you build a product that does an incredibly broad thing, finding that narrow use case and finding that product market fit is really important. So I do want to ask you, even though it's a little bit off topic, I do think, though, it's good for lawyers and entrepreneurial lawyers who mostly listen to the pod and other legal tech founders and such like yourself, who I understand as a listener to the podcast. What was that decision like to have this incredible tool that provides an amazing solution that's broad, but to at least start out narrowing your focus in the legal space? Let me tell you about the brand new sponsor for Law Subscribed, Paxton. I've been using Paxton as my legal AI tool for over 2 years. I continue to evaluate and demo other legal AI tools in the market and still decide to stick with Paxton because of its reliability, its accuracy, its ease of use, affordability, and they do not lock you into a long-term contract. Now, as a transactional and fractional general counsel attorney, I'm using Paxton for all of my substantive and non-substantive legal work, whether that's legal research, analysis, drafting, or enhancing existing legal work product. In the time it used to take me to draft and analyze legal documents, now, after a little bit of back and forth with Paxton, I have something ready to go in minutes that used to take hours or even days. While I'm no longer a litigator, I could see how valuable Paxton would be when researching a new issue, preparing for a deposition, drafting a motion, or going to trial. So if your firm would benefit from using Paxton as your legal AI tool, then make sure to use the link in the description when signing up to let Paxton know I sent you. That's all about our new sponsor. Now back to the show.
Yeah, we talked with more than 100 attorneys. Obviously, I have, experiences myself. And we, again, kind of go down to where all these underlying problems come from. And a lot of it is just that, that mess of documentation that gets thrown at lawyers, again, often in diligence transactions, but also when onboarding a new client, but then when just trying to stay with a client over time. In my own practice, you do work with the client, they come back 4 months later, they want to do some type of, legal work. And you kind of have to start from square one and think about, okay, what is the structure of the company? Who's on the board? What rights do I need to go about? And it's not only an incredibly inefficient process, but also really error prone because you're kind of having to build that memory from the ground up. So what we really thought about was how can we, again, analyze all these documents to be able to, deliver those outcomes in diligence, in new client onboarding, and in day-to-day counseling. And the foundation of that was really just let's get everything organized. And from that, we've been able to build a lot of really cool tools on top of that. Also understanding, for example, are all of these documents actually fully executed? If you have a Series C stock purchase agreement and there's supposed to be 20 different entities that are supposed to be signing this, our system can automatically review all of that, use a variety of text and vision models to understand are documents actually fully executed. We also have some really great comparison tools, for example, that enables you to take all of the offer letters that you might have with employees and compare them against one another to understand them. So we've tried to really start with kind of a narrow use case of just that consolidated organizational aspect, but we're able to then build upon that as we go on over time.
Yeah, that's really something too, because that's like a use case that I have sometimes is I will compare documents against each other and like wanting to know the similarities, differences, problematic things. And I am using, my primary tool I'm using is Paxton AI, and I am using it for that. In addition to just the compare feature in Word, which I only learned about after going into solo practice when I'm trying to be more efficient and I'm not billing by the hour, right? Do I learn about the compare tool, which saves so much time. But that only does a analysis at a literal level within the docs. When you're comparing, it doesn't actually perform analysis, right? And so what it sounds like is when you are comparing, say, multiple documents of a similar type or whatever to each other, that Marveri will spit out analysis, not just the differences, or is it just the differences for now and analysis is on the product roadmap? Tell me, where are you in that stage?
Yeah, so we have a variety of different tools. Some of them are focused much more on that analysis, being able to detect the different clauses that might be in different documents. For the comparison tool, the things that the customers really love about it is you're not just comparing one document against one document. You can take all 20 of a relevant set of documents and compare them at once. And you can look at one document that shows all 20 of them.
Mm-hmm.
The correlated tool that we have here, though, as well, is oftentimes you'll take those 20 documents, try and compare them together, and it's going to be a complete mess of a red line, right? Because in no circumstance do you ever get actually a really nice, clean set of 20 documents that are all on the same form and none were changed and they were all kind of consistent over time. So what our comparison and redline system can do is it can break those documents up and it can say, hey, you're actually dealing with 3 sets of documents here that, one, the invention assignment agreement seemed to be on one form, maybe when the company first got incorporated. Then there's another 10 set of documents that are on a different form, maybe when they went to one law firm. And then the rest of the documents are on a different form, maybe ones that, when they went to a new law firm or got an in-house GC. So we're able to, again, kind of be able to understand not just the literal, differences between them, but help the user really say, what are the different groups of documents that I should be looking at in order to compare the right ones?
Yeah, sounds incredibly powerful and incredibly useful. It begs a few questions, which I'm going to ask because we still have the time to ask, is the security of it all, right? I think there are downfalls and some pitfalls to having attorney co-founders of legal tech because they have all the baggage of the way things have always been done. Now, I don't think practiced law at a law firm long enough to come with that baggage, so that's a pro for you, but enough to understand the importance of attorney-client privilege and security and maintaining that. And there's a lot of questions lawyers have about that in terms of, is the AI training any models, on my data, on my client data. And so I think maybe you have just that Goldilocks zone of legal experience and education to prepare your company for those types of questions. So I already know the answer to that, but tell the listeners, what you all are doing to make sure that security concerns are being met.
Yeah, so those are obviously questions that we've thought about from the very founding of the company, because we knew that we'd be dealing with a really sensitive client documentation. So yeah, we have all those security protocols that you would expect, like data encryption and transit and at rest, SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, consistent third-party monitoring, as well as zero retention policies with API providers. That's something that I would also encourage your listeners to make sure that legal tech vendors have in place before they utilize them. I guess a quick background on that. A lot of legal tech providers will use certain foundation models like an OpenAI or Anthropic, and without certain enterprise agreements with them, the data that goes to them can potentially be retained by those companies or used for training new models, even if the legal tech company themselves is not training on that data. So, those are obvious agreements that we have in place to ensure that, there is no data retention by those third parties. And yeah, would definitely recommend that be included in any vendor questionnaires that your listeners might have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of these things where I'm never going to understand the technical back end of what the heck is happening and if it's actually secure. So the question then becomes, can you, the lawyer, reasonably rely on those representations, right? And one of the ways we do is you verify SOC 2 Type 2 compliance and all these other things, right? And you ask all those questions. And I think we can't not use the tech because we don't understand those things, I think, but we just have to know what questions to ask and if we can reasonably rely on the answers, then I think we have to go full steam ahead. So then the next question is okay, I'm a lawyer. I'm interested, and stick around because you could always go to the website. I'm sure you could sign up for a demo directly. I'm not sure if there's a direct link to that or something, but I'm a lawyer. I'm interested, but you don't just necessarily serve all lawyers. So who's your target market right now? Realizing we're recording January of 2025, so companies pivot and change all the time, and so but at least right now, who are the kind of lawyers that you even want to sign up for a demo?
Yeah, so, we're focused on corporate and transactional lawyers, and I think that is where we will stay. So, that can be a pretty broad word. What our customers mostly consist of now is either emerging company and venture capital lawyers, either doing company side representation or representing investors, doing a mix of both, as well as M&A lawyers, whether they're doing private equity deals, buy or sell side, everywhere from very small M&A to much larger M&A deals. But we're also working with in-house counsel that are doing more of these M&A deals, especially now, as well as servicing a variety of other clients that might need to, again, kind of synthesize large sets of documents. So for example, you might think of investment bankers as those that need to prepare companies, their data rooms for due diligence in order to then kick off a transaction. Attorneys might kind of take over that role in certain circumstances of being able to, get their clients' documents and house in order to complete a transaction. So those are the different segments that really love using our tool right now.
Okay. All right. Look, I think at some point when it makes sense, you should spin off some we're going to organize your files and then keep them organized, low level, entry level subscription for literally any company to use. I think there's something there. But don't just, throw that at the bottom of the product roadmap, Connor. Don't don't pivot too hard for that. But I seriously, if I have the biggest takeaway out of this, it's even if it's a one-time, one-off solution, literally every single company, maybe even person, could that AI tool organize all the mess of an individual's files for their life? There is something there, and if you don't have to rebuild the software, because the AI the prompting in the back is already, you just have to replace a few things to make it for personal use rather than business use. Your TAM significantly increases.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. It's funny. We've had a lot of people on the team test it with some of their own personal documents, and it works really well for that, which is funny. Nevertheless, though, one of the things that we find is that we spend a lot of time on, that I think even if down the road other companies try and do these organizational or tasks, is that it can be very different than kind of the legal specific way in which you want documents organized,
Yeah.
really understanding what the effective dates are, how to label different documents, be able to customize that, which is a solution that we provide. So if that a law firm or company has a naming convention they like, they can utilize that. So yeah, definitely trying to be flexible and work with a lot of documents. But no, we haven't gone the full approach of just opening it up to people completely outside of law and corporate documentation.
I mean, like you got to license that to Apple for Apple to just incorporate into Mac OS. Like seriously, like that would be such a major feature for just people's files. And frankly, that's an ongoing subscription I think people would pay for, because like you're just going to scan stuff or get emails and they're called something else in an attachment. And like even in your personal life, like I've collected so many, I keep things well segmented and I think I'm pretty organized, but I get lazy with naming things and filing things away in the right place. And like a little bit of like the new Siri AI powered stuff is a little bit better with finding files and stuff. But at the same time, like I think that's an ongoing service. Speaking of ongoing service and paying a subscription for a consumer level version of Marveri in the future, in its present day, like, okay, so I do a demo. I fall into one of these categories. I'm an in-house attorney. I'm a transactional M&A, startup venture space attorney, and I like it. You're going to have that conversation with them of the cost and realizing that prices change all the time. We're not going to talk about specific numbers, but if I wanted to use the product, what pricing model do you use when attorneys, law firms, in-house departments, otherwise want to sign up?
Yeah, we have a pretty basic subscription model, with some different usage levels, depending on, the size of the firm or the company. But yeah, one of the things that we really wanted to do is to make sure that our business model kind of continually aligns with customer value, so that, every time of renewal, a company or firm has a choice of whether or not to come back. And we want to make sure that we're always kind of, making sure that our customers have a reason to continue the subscription. And that's worked out really great. We still haven't seen, any of our customers that use the platform churn off of it yet, which is amazing. And, we're continually adding more and more tools so that hopefully that subscription just gets stickier and stickier over time and add more functionalities that lawyers will love.
And so basically you do an analysis of like the market and their usage and all that stuff and their use cases, and like you come up with a one subscription, or the customer has the option of like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 or something like that. Like how does that exactly does that work?
Yeah, oftentimes, customers will have different use cases that they want, or, have different ideas for how to leverage this technology. So, we'll typically work with them to make sure that, the pricing model fits with them. But nevertheless, the subscription-based pricing has definitely been really successful for us. And I'm sure that you love hearing, that more and more people are leveraging subscription models.
Yeah, and look, the reason I ask about like, do you just have like pricing or tiered pricing, or do you do custom subscriptions, is because a lot of lawyers leveraging the subscription model are asking the same types of questions about how they should do it for themselves, right? Like I have set pricing, I advertise on my website, and I can always default to that. But probably half of my clients have a custom subscription because after they sign up and start using my legal services, we're like, well, you don't perfectly fit into any of these packages, so we're going to come up with a custom price. Now, that does require me to have more what ultimately are sales conversations with my client where they're underutilizing my services or overutilizing them, and we want to find like where everybody's happy. Now, as a small business, I could have those and I could adapt, and that's easy for me. But you're a startup, and as you grow, do you anticipate at some point finding some fixed pricing that may even be advertised, or are you still going to try to hold on to that flexibility based on the actual user's needs?
Yeah, we definitely expect to have some, standard flat rate pricing, and then with some customizations, particularly at the enterprise level.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where we have much more of, those pricing conversations, just because, at that size and scale, often they will, need some more bespoke things like integrations with some of the existing services or other unique aspects that do require us to really think through that. And nevertheless, one of the things that's been helpful, I think, though, is that being able to deliver a really clear, strong value proposition means that there's kind of enough margin for both of us to always get value out of that relationship. So it's pretty easy to be able to find happy mediums even at the enterprise level.
Yeah. I mean, look, subscription aligns incentives between the provider and the user. Like that's at the end of the day. So something else, and we'll start to wrap up the conversation here. Something else I want to ask that I always love asking startup founders in general is, granted that this isn't part of the product now, but I'd like to know, especially as early stage as you are, anything really exciting on the product roadmap that like you want to share or talk about? Like, for example, I'll put a feature request in if I can right now. I haven't actually demoed or used the product myself yet, but based on all this stuff that you're doing, with the files and having access to all this stuff, and you kind of brought it up a little bit earlier about training like your own model. Like, could I, like, if I'm leveraging this tool, like, will I be able to, since it's already accessing all of my files and everything, like train my own like model or like internal use tool, like AI, like maybe I do still want an AI chatbot. Cause like I said, there's different features, that you do, with that you could do with this. So is that like something that I might be able to do since you're already looking at all the data anyway? And, or you could demur, you don't have to reveal anything, but I am curious to know, cause sometimes and it's no promises made, right? Cause it's upon the product roadmap, but I'd be curious to know like highest hopes, like actually, if you could tick off your favorite thing on the product roadmap, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, to address your point up front, we aren't working on, again, training models or having, model be trained on, individual data or client data. Nevertheless, we are offering, again, more of that customization. So if you, for example, in your practice have, certain provisions that you want to understand that might be very bespoke to your practice, across a variety of documents, you can leverage kind of all of our backend systems that is able to deliver those results very well, but leverage it for your exact purposes. So we get a lot of that benefit without needing to deal with any of this idea of like training models or having that be hosted by different customers. In terms of things on the product roadmap, where we're really heading is to, again, be able to understand a client or company's documents overall and not just on a document by document basis. So again, we already understand how documents relate to one another in a data room or in a set of client files, but we really want to be able to show to that user that, real overview of a company of, immediately, who are its key personnel, who is on the board, who are the investors, what are the various rights that they have, and really be able to provide that in a consolidated, really accurate way. So that's kind of where we're heading, and we're kind of ticking off different tools as we build to get to that, promised land of you upload your documents and then you get this full understanding of the company and what's both in the data room that's been provided, but also what's not in the data room and what things you still need to figure out and solve.
And if some lawyer is watching this, listening to this, as a reminder, all the videos are up on YouTube, at my Substack at lawsubscribe.com, and also here on LinkedIn. That if you're scared now, like, wait a minute, all that stuff that Connor just said, I used to bill tons of hours doing all that work. And now Marveri is just going to do all that stuff for me. Well, that's your inspiration to go off and ditch the billable hour and leverage another fee structure. I'm a little biased towards subscription, or at least a hybrid subscription and fixed fee type setup, because you're now going to be able to provide way more value to your clients by not having to bill them for the grunt work that Marveri is leveraging AI to do. And so I'm prepared. My firm's ready. I'm not scared about this future of what Marveri and other legal tech and other AI startups are doing. I welcome it. I look forward to it. And thanks again, Connor, for coming on the podcast and live at that. If watchers, listeners, they want to follow up with you, they want more information, sign up for a demo, how could they get in touch? What are all the links? Where should they go?
Yeah, to schedule a demo, you can go to marveri.com, marveri.com, and put in your information there, and we'll contact you for a demo. But please feel free to reach out to me directly via LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from, attorneys and people in this space as well.
All right, great. Well, Connor, you stick around for a minute as we go off live. To everyone who joined us live today, thank you very much. And please remember to share this episode, click the bell on LinkedIn to make sure you always see where I'm going live. I'm doing lots of LinkedIn Lives in 2025. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Make someone's day by sharing this episode with them. The best way to get in touch is to follow and message me on LinkedIn. To get extra content, subscribe to the newsletter at www.lawsubscribe.com, where you can also become a paid subscriber to get episodes and content early. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.